Hello everyone, I'd like to introduce you to the kidneys and their anatomy today. When we look at the urinary system, a lot of this is actually the study of nephrology, which is specifically the study of the kidneys. Your kidneys are very intricate. They have all of these little tiny structural units called nephrons in them, and so specific study of just the kidneys is called nephrology. If you study the urinary system, then that is urology. And for males, this also includes the reproductive system because all of the same tubing is used. But for females, the urinary system and the reproductive system are separate. The kidney has many functions. Its most well-known function is that it filters blood and removes waste, and this is certainly true. We depend on our kidneys to make sure that wastes are continually removed from our blood. But it also is involved in the production of hormones because it produces calcitriol, which is involved in calcium homeostasis, and erythropoietin to create new red blood cells. It helps to regulate ion levels and pH and blood pressure through hormones that are produced, through regulation of what is moved into the blood and what remains in the kidneys to be excreted as waste. And it also regulates blood glucose level through gluconeogenesis, the creation of glucose from non-carbohydrate sources, but this is just during extreme starvation. The kidney takes on that extra role. When you examine your urine, you can tell a lot about a person by looking at its composition, how much there is, the volume, what is the pH. Normally it's about 4.5 to 8. The specific gravity, which is slightly higher than water. Normally, specific gravity of water is 1, and so specific gravity of urine should be just slightly above 1. Specific gravity is a measure of the density of a fluid. You can look at the color and the turbidity of urine, whether your urine is pale yellow or if it's a dark amber color. That can tell you how hydrated you are. The turbidity is how cloudy it looks, and you can see how many solutes have been excreted into your urine at a quick glance. And the smell also can tell you about your urine. Is it sweet? Are you excreting glucose? Have you been consuming caffeine or asparagus? There are distinct smells that accompany urine depending on what you've been consuming. And then you can see in this table some of the common solutes that you see in normal urine output. When you're looking at kidney function, it's very common to do a urinalysis where you look at all of those different properties of your urine. Most of your urine, about 95%, will be water. Anything that is left in your urine is a substance that was not put back into the blood by the kidneys. So normally your kidneys will take almost everything out of your blood, and then it puts back into the blood the stuff that you need, and it leaves in the kidneys either excess materials that you don't need or waste products. If you have any kind of disease that changes your metabolism or your kidney function, you may notice extra substances that are normally not present in your urine and they suddenly appear. So for example, in diabetes mellitus, you will see glucose present in the urine, where in a normal urine sample, you would not expect to see any glucose. When you look at where the kidneys are placed in the urinary system, they are retroperitoneal, which means they are located behind the peritoneal membrane. And you can see in this picture, we've already gotten through the peritoneal membrane. So we've removed the intestines, the stomach, the liver, all of those, and we're all the way on the back wall. You can see that the right kidney hangs just a little bit lower than the left kidney. And then you have a ureter that drains urine from each of your right and left kidneys down to your urinary bladder, and then that urine will leave the body through the urethra. And if we look on the posterior view, you can see that your kidneys are somewhat protected by your ribs, but they do dip down a little bit lower. Here's an image showing that the kidneys are behind that peritoneal membrane. So here is the anterior view. So this would be where the front of your body is, where your belly button is. Here's your stomach, some intestines, and then this blue line is your peritoneal membrane. Your pancreas, your kidneys, these are all retroperitoneal, so they're behind that membrane. So you may notice if you do a dissection that you'll have to dig through a relatively thick membrane in order to clearly see the kidneys, or the pancreas for that matter. When you take out a kidney and you section it, you'll notice that it is pretty organized. So there is a clear outer layer called the cortex, and this is common anatomical terminology. Outer layer is called the cortex. The inner layer is the medulla. You'll notice that the medulla is organized into these triangular shapes, and these are called pyramids. So the renal medulla is composed of renal pyramids. So here's one pyramid, here's another pyramid, here's another pyramid. On the picture of a real kidney, this would be a pyramid, this one, and this one, and so forth. In between each pyramid, you can see a renal column. So right here, and right here, and right here is a renal column. On this picture, it would be right here, and right here, and so forth. The nephrons, or the basic functional unit of the kidney, are located along the edge of the cortex and the medulla, right here, for example. The nephrons are going to ultimately end up creating your urine for you. And that urine will continue to drain through the medulla, down through the tip of this renal pyramid, which is called the papilla. And the urine will drain through the papilla into this section right here called a minor calyx. So here's a minor calyx, and here, and here. It's called minor because it is small. So these are all minor calyces. Each of your minor calyces will drain into a larger major calyx. So here's a major calyx right here. Here's another major calyx up here. You can see multiple minor calyces drain into one major calyx. And then each of the major calyces will drain into this very large open area called the renal pelvis. And then the renal pelvis will collect all of the urine from the kidney, and that will drain into the ureter, which will ultimately head to the urinary bladder. And on this picture of the real kidney, your minor calyces would be here, and here, and here, down here, and down here. They drain into major calyces here and here, and then those drain into the renal pelvis here, and you can see just a little bit of the ureter right here. When you look at the nephrons, they can actually grow in size in order to accommodate a higher workload. And because they are so good at taking on extra work, you don't see any signs of kidney dysfunction until your kidney function is under 25%. And that is because your remaining nephrons are able to handle that extra load. One kidney is able to filter blood at 80% of the rate of two normal kidneys, which is why people are able to live with just one kidney. If your kidney function does decline and you do need a kidney transplant, they've found that it actually harms the person more, and there are more risks and more mortalities if you remove the dysfunctional kidney. And so when they collect a kidney, they will just attach it to the recipient, and they won't remove the dysfunctional kidney. So you'll end up with 3 kidneys potentially, although one of them won't really be functional. And you'll just connect the new kidney to the nearby pelvic artery and vein, and at that point the patient is going to need immunosuppressive drugs because you don't want your body attacking this new kidney that is performing this work for you. So you'll be more at risk for some things, but you'll have a functional kidney. If you cannot get on a kidney transplant list, or maybe your renal function hasn't gone down that far, or you're waiting for a transplant, you may use what's called dialysis. And dialysis is kind of a synthetic kidney. It cleans your blood and sends it right back to you. And so you can see this dialysis machine here, and you can see you have 2 needles. You're hooked up to an artery, and you're hooked up to a vein. And so your arterial blood comes through here, and it runs through this pump, goes through this tubing, and at this point all of your wastes are removed from your blood. And then you have your cleaned blood ready to go, and it is sent back into your vein. And it seems like it's a quick fix, and it's certainly good that we have this technology. People on dialysis frequently need to do this multiple times per week, 3 to 4 times a week, and every time you do it, it takes 3 to 4 hours. So this is a very time-consuming process, but it's necessary to do in order to clean your blood so you don't have toxic buildup of your waste products. There is peritoneal dialysis, where you basically embed this tubing and this cleaning system inside your peritoneum. And so you're constantly cleaning your blood that way. So that is kind of a nice long-term solution if you're not available to get a kidney transplant at that time. We'll start to zoom in on specific parts of the kidney, and we'll focus on the nephron. When you look at the nephron, there's two basic sections. You have a renal corpuscle and you have a renal tubule. So the renal corpuscle is this section over here. You can see your blood supply coming in here. Your glomerulus is part of your renal corpuscle, and your glomerulus is just a tangle of capillaries. So these are just tiny little itty-bitty blood vessels, and you can see that they're all kind of confined in here within this glomerular capsule that surrounds it. And then so blood is going to flow in through this afferent arteriole. Blood will flow through the glomerulus right here, and then whatever is left of your blood will exit through the efferent arteriole. And I say whatever's left because the main function of the glomerulus is to filter your blood. So whatever ends up coming out of your blood, called the filtrate, it's trapped in this capsular space right here. And now we're ready to move from our renal corpuscle, which is this entire section right here. We're moving from the renal corpuscle into the renal tubule. And the renal tubule is made of three parts. The one next to the glomerulus is called the proximal convoluted tubule. And I know it doesn't look like it on this picture, but it is actually quite convoluted. I'll show you a better picture in just a minute. So what was your filtrate is now called tubular fluid that you have filtered out and taken out of your blood. And you move this fluid through your proximal convoluted tubule. Then you go very deep down and then back up. This part is called your nephron loop. And then you head into your distal convoluted tubule before finally your distal convoluted tubules of multiple nephrons drain through a collecting tubule and then into a collecting duct. And then this collecting duct ultimately is going to drain through the renal papilla eventually. So the parts of your renal tubule, you have your proximal convoluted tubule, your nephron loop, and your distal convoluted tubule. Now this nephron is kind of stretched out. It's a lot easier to study the nephron and its processes if we stretch it out like this. Here is a slightly more accurate picture of a nephron. You can see a little bit more of those convolutions there in the proximal convoluted tubule right there. This picture right here is a little bit more accurate. You can see some more convolutions. And this one is more accurate, but it is kind of hard to study where things are entering and exiting the tubule in a picture like this. But just so you know, this is a more anatomically correct nephron. Both of these are. And you can certainly see how those proximal and distal convoluted tubules got their names. But generally when we study the nephron, we use that more stretched out nephron just because it's a little bit easier to study. But later when we talk about the juxtaglomerular apparatus and we talk about how the nephron loop or the distal convoluted tubule has direct contact with the arterioles, this is why.